Just because the 8-year-old boy pinched off a black bean, the stepmother beat up her 10-year-old sister, choked her and wouldn't let go, and scolded her for not teaching her brother well, until she choked her sister to the point of suffocation. Only then did she stop the stepmother's repeated abuse. The sister had to choose to call the police for help, but the police did not help. Instead, they felt that the sister was playing a game. They said that the stepmother is an adult. It is common to teach an ignorant child. Then they called the social worker. Send the sister home as soon as possible.
제가 뭐 잘못한 거예요? 나쁜 일 생기면 경찰 아저씨한테 가서 그렇게 배웠는데.
In the face of my sister's persistent questioning, the adults at the scene also ignored. Finally, accompanied by social workers, sister came home again. When she saw her stepmother, she backed away subconsciously, but the stepmother was uncharacteristic. She hugged her sister tenderly. She even took the initiative to apologize. This made her look confused, but the stepmother invited the social worker into the house. She said that she misunderstood her intentions. She also accused her sister of lying with an innocent face. She exaggerated her true behavior. Seeing the stepmother's pitiful look, the social workers had no choice but to believe her for the time being. They made a memo and left first, but as soon as the social workers left, the stepmother ordered her sister to raise her hands and kneel on the ground. When she put her hands down because they were numb, she was told to go back to her room quickly, but not to let her rest. But she was to receive another round of beatings. Such a brutal act, even the brother in the next room heard. He didn't dare to make a sound. Every time after beating her sister, the stepmother would complain to the child's own father, urging him to send the siblings away as soon as possible. But the father simply refused, not out of fatherly love, but just for the rightful use of the benefits on the child's account. Dad's heartlessness, mom's violence, and the disbelief of the police around, leaving the sister to seek help from the class teacher, although she saw the strangulation marks on her neck. But the teacher did not want to meddle in the matter. Excuses to busy with other work and go away first. The sister looked helpless. When she didn't know what to do, the director's brother suggested that she go to the male social worker who came to his house that day. The male social worker was quite nice, seeing that the two children were hungry, so he took them to eat burgers first. Finally, he drove them home himself. After his company, sister and brother also enjoyed more love than ever before. The world of a child is very pure. They trust the people who love them. The next day, they approached the male social worker again. They wanted him to help them find a photo of their birth mother, but the social worker refused. After all, he is not a private detective, but in order to make the children happy, so he took them to the zoo. But when the children came back to him the next day, Tom, the social worker, quickly sent them away because he had an offline interview to attend. Then he gave the kids a piece of money, promised to go for burgers with him next time, but the younger brother was still fussing. He had to stay by Tom's side until he got the gorilla doll in the back of the car. The little guy calmed down a bit and got out of the car. The sister was worried that she would never see Tom again. When she was leaving, asked him to leave his practice. Tom then handed his business card to his sister. It turns out that Tom was originally a lawyer. He didn't want to work in a small law firm. He had been unsuccessful in interviews at big law firms, so he chose to work as a social worker first. Today's interview, it's a good opportunity for him to fulfill his dream of working in a big law firm. So he left everything behind and went to the scene first. In the end, he got the chance to join the big law firm. He then quit his job as a social worker after saying goodbye to his family and drove off to his new journey. Without Tom's escort, my sister had to take my brother home alone. When she arrived home, the stepmother took out the card Tom gave her sister. She suspected that her sister was going to sue again, so she tied her hair again with a hairband. The children were terrified because the stepmother does this before every violent act. She does this every time she gets violent. Soon the sister was on the ground, though bruised and battered. The father outside the house did not care. Eventually, the girl couldn't bear the pain, suddenly collapsed in the classroom during the lesson. Fortunately, she was brought to the hospital in time for treatment. The girl's life was saved, but after she recovered, she had to go home. This was not a good thing because of her stepmother's abuse. It wouldn't stop. She remembered she could contact Tom for help, but the repeated calls were disconnected. At the time, Tom was working on his job and wouldn't answer. Sister was also completely disappointed. Sister forced by stepmother to beat her own brother. Just a light swipe at her brother. She held her brother tightly in pain and cried, but the stepmother pulled her hair and threw her away. The stepmother then went so far as to beat her brother in front of her sister. Beat her brother violently, one slap after another, and the force kept increasing. The sister was begging and pleading, but the stepmother still did not stop. Both siblings were beaten by their stepmother. Finally, the younger brother was lying on the bed in pain. Dying, he said goodbye to his sister until his breath was gone. The younger brother was beaten to death. The police immediately launched an investigation, but the stepmother, in order to protect herself, began to force the sister to become a scapegoat.
살고 싶으면 엄마 말 잘 들어. 네가 그랬잖아. 말해봐.
I've been threatened by her words and actions. Sister, also gradually paralyzed, finally confessed to all the evidence and let the police take her away. Tom was shocked when he received the message. He couldn't believe that his sister, who was once a good and obedient person, would kill her brother when he learned that before his brother died. When he learned that his brother had stolen his stepmother's money to buy burgers, Tom just remembered the money he had given to the two siblings to spend. He was distraught. If only he hadn't let his children, if he hadn't let the kids get away with domestic abuse by their stepmother, they wouldn't have been killed. Looking at his sister, who was taken away by the police, Tom was furious. He didn't want the children to be wronged. He rushed forward and called out his sister's name, but his sister was finally taken into the police station. Since she was still a child, she was soon released by the police and returned home. When I was alone in my room at night, I would always think of my cute little brother, but things had changed. She could only hold her brother's favorite gorilla doll. She kept talking about her worries.
어른들은 믿으면 안 돼. 어른들은 믿으면 네가 죽는 거야.
The doll eventually became the only thing my sister could count on, but the stepmother felt that the dead brother's things are an eyesore. All of them were packed and thrown away, even the brother's favorite gorilla doll before he died. She didn't even let go of the things she threw away. All the things she threw away were eventually seen by her sister's closest friend. Looking at the discarded gorilla, she was speechless. When I saw my sister again, Tom was also very guilty, remembering that he had hung up on her many times before, and his sister wouldn't look at him anymore. After Tom returned to the company, he asked the boss to help him, allowed him to help his sister file a lawsuit accusing her stepmother of sabotage so that the child can grow up in a peaceful environment. But the boss didn't think so.
그런 부모 밑에서 태어난 애들이 있어요. 재수 없는, 어쩔 수 없는 거죠.
Such a heartless idea, totally contrary to Tom's original intention. He finally decided to leave the place. In the end, he had to go back to his original small law firm, but the seniors told him that the lawsuit was not easy to fight because his sister had already confessed. But Tom still insisted in his heart. When his friends knew about it, also all came to help. Now all they have to do is to find all the evidence of the stepmother's guilt, but all the evidence is now under police control. They can't do anything about it. When they thought they had nothing to go on, Tom used his contacts from his volunteer work. He quickly gathered evidence of his sister's previous abuse, multiple evidence of abuse and indictments. The police had to follow these clues to find out the truth about his brother's murder, and they did learn from the doctor the brother's fatal injuries could not have been caused by a little girl. All the evidence was combined. Tom quickly and successfully filed a lawsuit against the stepmother. The stepmother saw the court ticket. She thought it was her sister who reported her. Angry, she took out a rolling pin. She wanted to get rid of her sister. She didn't stop until she had to answer the phone. The trial was about to begin. The lawyers also had to consider whether she would be willing to testify, but Tom had already planned it. The next day, he went to see his sister's best friend from school. Every day after that, he would bring a bag of gifts to his sister's house, hang it on the door handle and leave. Sister finally took out all the gifts. She knew they were from Tom. After putting on the Walkman inside, she heard Tom's words. He kept encouraging her to testify in court to do justice for herself and her brother, because everyone would help her. The sister burst into tears, and she was about to put on her shoes and leave the house. But before she had a chance to leave, her stepmother came back. The girl tugs on stepmother's leg, praying for her to stop hitting her, but the stepmother kicked her out. The girl was then brutally beaten. She was beaten until her hands went numb. When her hands got tired, she kicked her again. The girl cried out in pain. Her friends outside the house heard the sound. The kids called Tom's phone. When they found out the girl was a victim, Tom grabbed a hammer and ran to her house. When the stepmother raised the stool and hit the girl, Tom pried open the door in time to come in. When he saw the girl, who had been beaten to the point of immobilization, Tom was distraught. When he approached to check, the stepmother pulled away.
내 새끼하고 놀지 마.
네가 인간이냐?
Tom could not stand the girl being abused. He picked her up and ran outside, despite the repeated taunts from the child's stepmother behind him. He didn't want to turn back. Tom finally had to take the bruised and battered girl to his home, even though he had never met her before. Tom's sister saw the girl's face. Tom's sister was heartbroken. The girl in Tom's house. At last, she was no longer beaten by her stepmother and a room to herself, but the girl apologized to Tom for not being able to keep the doll he gave to her brother. She let her stepmother throw it away as garbage. Tom did not care and offered to buy her another. The girl was able to lie down calmly, but soon after, her heartless father came to spill his guts and threatened to take the child away immediately, or he would call the police. Tom didn't panic at all.
내일이면 출석할 건데 경찰을 왜 불러? 아니다. 그냥 미리 들어가라.
When he couldn't take the girl away, Dad insisted to see her. This request was again opposed by Tom, because at this moment Tom had become the girl's client. Let the father speak to him as his lawyer if he has something to say. Although in the room, when the girl heard her father's voice, she was too scared to sleep. On the first official day of the trial, the stepmother started acting. First, she cried a lot, expressing her guilt for the girl, and then she showed her determination to take care of the girl. Tom was speechless after hearing this. When asked by the judge, when the judge asked him if he had killed the girl's brother, the stepmother again pretended to be innocent. She said she didn't know anything about it, but always stressed that it was the girl who did it. After the first trial, the court, only the testimony of the stepmother. Now to win the case. The girl's testimony was needed to win the case. But when Tom came home and saw the girl who had been sleeping, he didn't know what to do while lying on the couch, half resting. But then his nephew came home and reminded him that the doll he had given to the girl's brother. There was an open camera. Tom quickly ran to the junkyard to look for it, but from day to night, but he still couldn't find the doll. He finally had to give up. At the second trial, the girl also appeared in court as promised, but when faced with the questioning, the girl did not answer anything, just kept crying. Finally, the judge could only temporarily adjourn the court. Tom had to encourage the girl again. Tell the truth. The girl seemed to have a lot of things squeezed in her heart. Even though Tom tried hard to persuade her, she didn't do anything. If the girl continued to say nothing, the chances of losing the case would increase. Tom did not know what to do. The critical moment, the girl's little friend actually brought in the gorilla doll. He picked it up when the girl's stepmother wasn't looking. When the trial started again, Tom took the doll to the girl. Seeing her brother's belongings returned to her, the girl also finally opened up her heart. She cried about her stepmother's evil deeds. The lawyer for the other side thought only the girl's one-sided words cannot be taken as evidence. Fortunately, there are still cameras in the dolls. With the footage being shown in court, we can see how brutal the stepmother is. The video footage also clearly recorded the whole process of the stepmother's murder of the girl's brother. Everyone in the courtroom cried out in pain after watching it, but the stepmother still argued again and again.
인정합니다. 하지만 어디까지나 엄마로서.
And that pissed Tom off.
진짜 엄마 맞습니까? 모정이라는 게 이렇게 애정을 쏟는 다빈이 민준이 보기에 부끄럽지 않...
Despite Tom's accusations of guilt, but the stepmother never admitted her fault. But the law is fair. The stepmother eventually got the heaviest trial. The girl's father was also punished accordingly. With Tom's help and enthusiasm, the girl was able to grow up well. After Tom's many searches, the girl was finally able to get a picture of her mother. She caressed her hand, the person she loves and desires the most.